The major move by Russia's neighbor Finland. After years of neutrality, it made moves today to join the most powerful alliance in the world, NATO. In a statement, the president of the country said NATO membership would strengthen Finland's security. Finland must apply for NATO membership without delay. Russia responded to Finland's announcement, threatening to take retaliatory steps to stop threats to its national security. With us now to discuss Finland's announcement that it hopes to join NATO is Lieutenant General Doug Lute, former U.S. ambassador to NATO. General Lute, thanks so much for joining us. Finland's leaders today called for applying for NATO membership, quote, without delay if they join, along with Sweden as expected. How would this change the security panorama in Europe and the wider North Atlantic?
Well, such a move would be a win-win for Finland and Sweden as nations because they gain the whole life insurance policy of NATO membership. That is the full benefit of Article 5, which essentially says that any attack on one member would be considered by all the other members as an attack on them. So an attack on one is an attack on all. So they gain a lot. NATO itself would gain a lot by welcoming these two new members. First of all, they would represent an anchor in the sensitive and critical Baltic-Nordic region, sort of the northeast corner of the alliance. And the alliance would gain two very well-established democracies with meaningful military capabilities. So it's a win-win for the countries and for the alliance. The only loser in this equation is Vladimir Putin, who, of course, has achieved what he said he wanted to reverse, which is the enlargement of NATO.
On the same day as Finland's announcement, former Russian President Dmitri Medvedev posted on Telegram that NATO, by sending weapons to Ukraine and training its troops, is increasing the chances of a direct conflict between NATO and Russia, risking what he said, quote, would be a full-fledged nuclear war. What do you make of those comments?
Well, first of all, the United States and others who are helping Ukraine are actually following the precepts of the UN Charter all the way back to 1945, which says that every country has a right to defend itself, and the UN members have the right, in fact, the responsibility to help them in such a defense. So we're completely in the right with regard to our support in Ukraine. And furthermore, the U.S. and our partners who are supporting Ukraine have taken careful steps not to overdo the support and not to provide provocative levels of support, but rather to give Ukraine the required capability to defend itself.
And many experts have said that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was meant to tamp down on Ukraine's ambitions to join NATO. Now we have likely two new NATO members right up along Russia's border. How does that make NATO allied countries safer if it further provokes Russia?
Well, the pretext all along that President Putin offered with regard to the attack on Ukraine about NATO membership was a phony pretext from the outset. And what he's proven to countries like Finland and Sweden, who are outside the alliance protection, is that they require membership in the alliance to protect themselves. He has demonstrated that in the first major attack on a European country since 1945, he's demonstrated the essence of NATO and why NATO is so important. So he's actually delivered to himself exactly what he said at the beginning he wished to avoid.
What's the path to de-escalation of this conflict at this point?
Well, it's difficult to see because if you look at the two protagonists, the two warring parties, Ukraine and Russia, it doesn't appear yet that they have sufficient overlapping grounds for some sort of diplomatic solution, some sort of compromise. You see Ukraine actually gaining momentum, as your correspondent reported, gaining momentum in parts of the battlefield, and yet Russia is gaining in other parts of the battlefield. Neither side has yet exhausted the battlefield dynamic. And until that's done, I don't see room for a diplomatic outcome.
Lieutenant General Doug Lute, we thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.